Elias Kane sat hunched in the dim corner of his cramped cell, the flickering fluorescent light casting ominous shadows on the peeling concrete walls. His sharp hazel eyes flicked past the rusted bars, narrowing as memories flickered like static in his mind. Marcus's easy smile, their secret laughter in the shadows of alleyways, the promise they made to watch each other's backs no matter what. Outside, the distant clang of doors echoed through the prison. But inside, Elias felt the cold weight of betrayal pressing down on his chest, the scar on his cheek, a jagged souvenir from a street fight in his fractured youth, prickled as if alive with the ghosts of his past. He clenched his fists, feeling the roughness of the makeshift shiv he'd carved from a broken piece of metal, a silent reminder that survival here meant playing by rules, carved in blood and fear. A faint whisper floated through the cell door, low and cautious. "You got a visitor!" The guard's muffled voice crackled through the speakers. Elias's heart quickened, not because he expected someone kind, but because he knew the game was never that simple. He straightened, brushing dirt from his tattered shirt, and nodded silently. As the guard unlocked the door and stepped back, Elias emerged into the narrow corridor, his movements deliberate, every step echoing with purpose. The visitor, a wiry man with a scarred face and eyes that glittered like shards of broken glass, waited near the corner, clutching a crumpled envelope. "Marcus," Elias muttered under his breath, every muscle taut. The man nodded subtly, voice rough but steady. "They took him fast, man. The faction doesn't play fair." Elias's jaw clenched. I knew they'd go after him, but I didn't think they'd kill him so clean, so cold. His voice cracked, revealing the ache beneath his hardened exterior. Marcus looked around nervously, then leaned in closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "Listen, you're not just here to look pretty behind bars. You want payback, right?" Elias's eyes flickered with a dangerous glint. "More than anything." Marcus handed him the envelope. "This has everything you need. Proof Marcus uncovered about the corruption, the real reason they silenced him." Elias's fingers trembled as he opened it, revealing photos, documents, and a map of clandestine meetings. His mind raced with possibilities, with visions of revenge, of tearing down the fractured walls of the organization from the inside. But beneath his fierce resolve simmered a darker question. Could he survive this game without losing what little of himself remained? His voice was a low growl, edged with steel. "Good, I'll use this. But I swear, Marcus, I'll crush whoever's responsible, no matter what it takes." The weight of vengeance pressed against his chest, yet a flicker of calculation flickered in his eyes, an understanding that survival demanded not just fury, but cunning. As Marcus was pulled back toward the shadows, Elias turned, clutching the evidence close, feeling the scars on his face burn with renewed purpose. The prison's claustrophobic air seemed to pulse with the promise of chaos, a chaos he was about to unleash, crouching behind a cluster of inmates, voice barely above a whisper. "What's the word? Is it safe?" Marcus nodded briefly, eyes flickering with a mixture of camaraderie and concern. "For now. But they're watching everyone. That new guy, Rocco, he's got the warden's ear. We gotta keep him steady, or it's all over." Elias's stomach clenched, his mind racing through the layers of danger intertwined with this fragile alliance. "And the mediation? You still think you can keep the peace?" Marcus chuckled softly, a flicker of pride crossing his face. "Someone's gotta do it. Keeps the chaos from spilling over, keeps me breathing. You know how it is in here. Every word counts, every move is a gamble. The warden's behind it all, pulling strings from somewhere else, but we're the ones front and center. That's why I trust you, Elias. We've got a plan, but it's thin ice." Elias reached out, briefly gripping Marcus's shoulder, their eyes locking in a silent vow. Beneath the surface of their quiet exchange lay unspoken truths. Loyalty forged in the shadows, the weight of unrelenting violence, and the dangerous game of survival they played daily. This moment, fleeting yet charged, was emblematic of the delicate balance they maintained, on the brink of chaos, yet holding on to a fragile hope that their bond could withstand the storm that lurked beyond the fences. The distant clang of metal doors and muffled shouts echoed in their ears. But in this corner of the yard, amid the gritty chaos and underlying threat of betrayal, they found a rare moment of trust, an anchor in the swirling tide of prison power, secrets, and deadly loyalties. The dim glow of a single flashlight flickered along the damp length of the underground tunnel, its weak beam casting jagged shadows across crumbling brick walls. Elias moved cautiously, every step echoing softly in the confined space, muscles tense from the weight of anticipation. Marcus's voice finally broke the suffocating silence, husky but urgent. "Elias, look at this," he whispered, pulling a crumpled piece of paper from his tattered shirt pocket. The paper was stained with ink and sweat, but the words were clear enough. Names, dates, coded references. Marcus pressed it into Elias's palm, eyes flickering with both fear and defiance. "This isn't just street gossip," he said, voice trembling. "It's proof. The whole operation, the corruption, the collusion with the guards, the officials taking their cut. They're running this place from the inside out, and it's deeper than we thought." Elias's eyes darted over the fragile sheet, a shiver running down his spine. "So what's the plan? We expose them, make a move?" he asked, voice edged with disbelief. Marcus shook his head sharply, eyes darting nervously towards the tunnel's dark entrance. "No, not yet. We're sitting on a powder keg, Elias. If they find out I've got this, if they sense I'm onto them, they'll silence me. Or both of us. They're connected to the warden. Powerful men who don't play fair. I thought you should see this before it's too late." Elias clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of Marcus's words settle into his bones. "I swear, Marcus, I won't let anything happen to you. We'll protect this, and I'll make sure they pay for what they did to you." Marcus's eyes softened, but his voice remained cautious. "Be careful, Elias. The moment you step out of these tunnels, everything changes. They're watching, more than we know. Promise me you won't rush in blindly. If they get wind of this, they'll crush us before we even blink." Elias nodded, a cold resolve forming in his chest. "I got it. I promise. But I also promise I won't let Marcus's death be for nothing. I'll find a way to burn their corruption to the ground, even if it kills me." As they slipped the fragile sheet back into Marcus's pocket, a sudden muffled shout echoed from the tunnel's mouth, sending a jolt through both men. Their eyes locked one last time, silent vows passing between them amid the shadows, pounding the ground as they closed in with lethal precision. Marcus's face twisted with determination as he saw the threat. An ominous, silent signal passing between him and Elias earlier, now playing out in brutal reality. "Go, run!" Marcus shouted, voice strained but resolute, his hand clutching the paper as if it were his lifeline. The enforcers' masks hid their expressions, but not the brutality in their movements. One of them, a towering figure clad in black, grabbed Marcus by the collar, yanking him backward. Marcus fought, kicking and punching, trying to free himself. But the enforcer's grip tightened like steel. "You're dead if you don't cooperate," a gravelly voice growled through the mask. Marcus's eyes darted towards Elias, a silent plea etched into his face. "No!" Elias screamed, voice cracking with raw anguish as he leapt to his feet, clutching the evidence close to his chest. His mind raced. This wasn't just about silencing Marcus. It was about crushing any chance of justice, covering up the faction's deepest secrets. A flash of metal caught Elias's eye, an enforcer wielding a stun baton, crackling with deadly energy. The enforcer shoved Marcus into the van's open door, shoving him roughly as the vehicle's engine roared to life, tires squealing on the gravel. Marcus's eyes widened with terror and defiance, his voice drowned out by the engine's growl. "Don't let them win," Marcus's voice echoed, a desperate cry that seemed to carry the weight of their shared past and the hope for truth. Elias's scream of grief tore through the cold night air as he watched Marcus, his best friend, his brother in arms, being forced into the van, shadows of masked figures closing ranks behind him. The vehicle sped away, vanishing into the darkness, leaving Elias trembling with rage and despair. His fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white, wounds forming from the pressure. He knew in that moment that Marcus's death wasn't accidental or just a warning. It was an orchestrated act, a calculated move by the faction's leadership to silence the one person who could expose their web of corruption. Elias's vision blurred with tears, yet a fierce, burning resolve ignited within him. He would burn their secrets to ash, no matter the cost. The shadows receded into the night, swallowing the van and its grisly cargo. But the image of Marcus's final defiant stare haunted Elias, fueling the storm of vengeance that would come to define his path. The night air hung heavy with silence, broken only by the distant echoes of guards' footsteps and the faint hum of fluorescent lights flickering overhead. Elias stood in the shadows of a dim corridor, his fists clenched so tightly that the veins on his forearms threatened to burst. His breath was ragged, each inhale trembling with the storm of grief and rage raging inside him. The image of Marcus's last defiant stare, a flash of stubborn loyalty amid chaos, seared into his mind. He remembered how Marcus had been so close to uncovering something dangerous, something that didn't just threaten their lives, but the entire corrupt system controlling the prison. Suddenly, a voice emerged from the darkness, low and cautious, like a whisper carried by the wind. "You don't know the half of it, Elias." The words made him freeze, eyes narrowing as a gaunt figure stepped forward, an inmate known in the shadows as the Informant. The man's face was marked with age and regret, his eyes darting nervously before he continued. Marcus had proof, real proof, about the officials, the guards, the whole damn syndicate. He was onto something big, bigger than any of us imagined. Elias's heart pounded painfully against his ribcage, the realization sinking in with brutal clarity. Marcus hadn't just been murdered because he knew too much. He'd stumbled upon a conspiracy that stretched beyond the prison walls, implicating powerful figures who pulled strings from outside. The flickering light cast eerie shadows on the inmate's face as he reached into a torn pocket, producing a crumpled piece of paper stained with sweat. During his last visit to the prison's forbidden zones, his fingers trembled slightly, but his mind was laser-focused, synced with the flashing code scrolling across the screen. Tonight he wouldn't storm the faction's heavily guarded chambers or confront their enforcers head-on. Instead, he'd infiltrate their digital backbone, the clandestine communication system that connected their network of whispered orders, encrypted plans, and silent threats. With a slow, deliberate breath, Elias hacked into the prison's internal server, his eyes flickering over lines of code that looked like a foreign language at first, but gradually revealed themselves as part of a layered digital fortress. As he bypassed firewalls and dodged security protocols, he muttered under his breath, "Come on, show me your secrets." Suddenly the screen flickered, and a flurry of messages flooded the interface. Coded exchanges between faction leaders, plans for Marcus's murder, and orders to tighten their grip on the prison's chaos. Elias's pulse quickened. This was the breakthrough he'd been waiting for, the key to exposing the faction's deepest secrets without risking direct combat. Carefully, he extracted the files, embedding snippets of their encrypted conversations into a digital virus he'd designed, one that would unleash chaos when triggered. His plan was not just to sabotage, but to dismantle their hold from within, disrupt their operations, turn their own communications against them, and sow distrust among their ranks. As he worked, a shadowy figure appeared in the cell-block doorway, a guard with a cold stare. Elias froze, heart pounding louder than before. But it was only a moment of pause. He had learned the art of invisibility in digital space, and now it was time to act in the physical world, too. Quietly, he slipped the device into a hidden crevice, knowing that this small act of rebellion could trigger a cascade of chaos, an opening for him to build alliances with prisoners like Lila, a fiery ex-lawyer with her own vendettas against the system. Elias's jaw tightened as he looked back at the flickering screen, the weight of his secret mission pressing heavily on him. "This is just the beginning," he whispered, eyes burning with resolve. "Once I've made their secrets public, nothing will be the same. They won't see me coming." The prison, with its suffocating silence and looming danger, suddenly felt less like a trap and more like a battlefield for a war of shadows, one where every secret uncovered was a step closer to justice or ruin. And Elias Kane, hacker and survivor, was prepared to navigate every twist and turn, trusting that his infiltration tonight was the first strike in a much larger war. A war for truth, loyalty, and his very soul. In the dim shadows of a narrow corridor, flickering with the harsh glow of a neglected overhead bulb, Elias Kane and Lila huddled close behind a rusted metal barrier, their breaths forming ghostly clouds in the stale prison air. Lila's eyes shimmered with fierce determination as she pulled out a crumpled folder stained with dirt and ink, pressing it into Elias's trembling hand. "This," she whispered urgent, "is the key to turning their world upside down. I've managed to crack the security code on the official records. Prison officials, faction leaders, even some of the guards. Everything's there, black and white." Her voice was steady but edged with adrenaline. Elias's fingers trembled as he leafed through the pages, the weight of the information pressing into his palm, revealing the depths of corruption, betrayal, and cover-ups that stretched far beyond Marcus's murder. "You're sure about this?" he asked softly, scanning the documents that detailed illicit deals, secret alliances, and orders from the highest echelons of the faction. Evidence that could topple the entire corrupt hierarchy if leaked correctly. Lila nodded sharply, her expression hard. "Once I send this out, they won't have time to react. It's our best shot. I've got a contact outside," forming on his lips. Beneath the surface of this dark, suffocating prison, a new war was beginning, one where shadows cloaked betrayal, and the line between friend and enemy blurred into chaos. And Elias Kane, hacker and survivor, was prepared to dance on that razor's edge, trusting that tonight's act of rebellion would ignite a Thor revolution, and perhaps finally free him from the chains of vengeance and deception that had haunted him since Marcus's murder. Elias Kane moved with meticulous purpose, his eyes darting across the dimly lit cell block as he carefully planted false information into the faction's digital logs, knowing that even a whisper of suspicion could unravel everything he'd worked for. His fingers, steady despite the pounding adrenaline, typed coded messages into a secure terminal hidden beneath a pile of battered books and scraps of torn cloth. The flickering fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on his face, highlighting the tension etched deep into his jaw. As he finished, he leaned back slightly, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. A faint smile crossed his lips as he whispered, "Let's see how long they keep trusting each other when the cracks start to show." Suddenly, a guard's muffled voice echoed down the corridor, drawing Elias's attention. "Hey, you! What are you doing in there?" Instantly, Elias straightened, slipping into the guise of innocence, his heart pounding with the awareness that any slip could blow his cover. He stepped toward the door, feigning surprise. "Nothing to see here, just fixing the wiring," he called back, voice calm yet wary. Inside, he had already set the trap, sowing discord by subtly feeding misinformation through trusted contacts and manipulating the faction's fragile hierarchy. His plan was to make each leader suspicious of the other, turning their unity into chaos from within. Yet, as he watched the guards move on, Elias knew the danger was far from over. The faction's members were sharp, their paranoia flaring like a wildfire, and each whisper of dissent was a thread that could unravel his entire web. The very act of deception was a double-edged sword. One misstep could expose him as the mole, making him the target of suspicion, or worse, the next victim in a deadly game of loyalty and betrayal. Elias's mind raced with calculated lies, fake alliances forged in shadows, and the constant dance of trusting no one but himself. His breath hitched briefly as he caught sight of a fellow inmate eyeing him with distrust, a silent reminder that in this prison, trust was merely a currency, and everyone was waiting for their moment to strike. Yet beneath the layers of deception, Elias clung to his resolve to manipulate the fractured hierarchy from within, to turn their own suspicion against them, and to keep his true agenda hidden until the final, decisive move. Every decision, every whisper, every glance was a piece on his perilous chessboard. One wrong move could cast him into the abyss of betrayal, where survival might come only at the cost of his morality. As he slipped back into the shadows, Elias Kane knew that in the brutal game of shadows and steel, trust was a lie, and betrayal the only way forward. In the dim, flickering light of the cramped prison cell, Elias crouched behind a pile of smuggled papers and makeshift devices, his fingers flying over his hacked tablet as whispers of chaos erupted outside. The tension was thick enough to cut with a blade. Factions clashing, alliances fracturing, prisoners turning one another into enemies with every passing hour. Elias's eyes flicked between the screen and the shadowy figures milling in the corridors. "Lila," he whispered into his comm unit, voice low but urgent. "We're running out of time. The faction split is deeper than we thought, but it's unstable. They're suspecting each other more than ever." Her reply crackled back, sharp and uncompromising. "Good. We push harder now. We need to strike before they regroup. No mercy, trust no one. We're playing with fire, but this is the only way to weaken them. If I can keep the factions fighting among themselves, I'll buy us time. Time to expose the bigger conspiracy, to turn their own chaos against them." The shadows stretched longer as trust crumbled beneath the weight of deception, Lila's ruthless tactics threatening to drown them all in blood. Elias's mind whirled with the dangerous calculus. Every lie, every misdirection, a nail in the coffin of their enemies. Every move a delicate step on a razor's edge. His gut told him that, in this game of shadows, loyalty was a fragile illusion. Every prisoner, every faction, could turn on him in an instant. But to survive, he had to accept this, feed the chaos, and harness betrayal itself as his weapon, no matter how close to the edge he danced. As the distant clashes echoed, Elias's eyes burned with fierce resolve, knowing that soon the line between friend and foe would blur beyond recognition, and only the cunning would endure. Elias's mind raced as he pieced together the fragments of truth he had uncovered. Marcus's murder was no ordinary act of violence within the prison walls. It was a calculated move orchestrated by the very figures who claimed to uphold order, a clandestine alliance formed in shadows between corrupt prison officials and the faction leaders, all united in secrecy to maintain their iron grip. The evidence was buried beneath layers of deception, hidden files on a secure server inside the prison's restricted network, accessible only through Elias's hacking skills. Heart pounding, he crouched in the dim corner of his cell, fingers trembling over a smuggled USB drive he had painstakingly concealed. They thought they could silence Marcus forever. Elias muttered bitterly, eyes darting around to ensure no guards lingered nearby. "But I see through the lies now." He connected the device to his improvised hacking terminal, an old, battered laptop scavenged from the mess of the prison's underground tunnels, and watched as encrypted files flickered onto his screen, revealing the web of corruption spanning from the guards' offices to the faction's highest echelons. The images and documents painted a damning picture. Forged evidence, bribed officials, and covert meetings where prison leaders exchanged sealed envelopes filled with cash, all to keep the faction's grip tight. Elias felt a surge of adrenaline. This was the leverage he needed, a weapon far more powerful than fists or knives. His plan was audacious, dangerous. He would leak this evidence beyond the prison's oppressive walls, through clandestine channels, to external authorities who could finally dismantle the shadowy network. As he prepared to transfer the files onto the USB, a voice crackled over the radio, cold and measured. "You're playing a dangerous game. Kane, don't think for a second we won't find out what you're up to." Elias's jaw clenched, knowing that betrayal from within was imminent. Yet he also understood that exposing the truth was the only way to ensure Marcus's death wasn't in vain. With a deep breath, he initiated the transfer, watching the progress bar crawl forward as a flood of evidence spilled into the real world, risking everything to ignite a crack in the prison's dark fortress. Every second counted as he felt the weight of the stakes. This act of defiance, this leak of truth could dismantle the corrupt alliance and bring justice, or plunge him into an even deeper abyss, where trust was a myth and survival depended on betrayal. Betrayed by trusted allies, including Lila, whose true motives are revealed to be self-serving, Elias finds himself utterly isolated, with the shadows closing in around him as the prison's atmosphere thickens with dread. His hideout, once a sanctuary of calculated movements and whispered secrets, now hums with the sinister certainty that his enemies have discovered his treachery. The flickering fluorescent lights cast harsh, shifting shadows across the... It's too late for doubts. The crowd begins to close in, fists clenched, shouts rising like a storm. "Time's up, kid!" Another prisoner snarls, aiming a shiv at Elias. In that instant, he realizes the depth of his isolation. His carefully laid plans, his hacking, his alliances, all shattered. He backs against the cold metal wall, heart hammering, knowing that this moment might be his last. The faction's leader, cloaked in calm menace, steps forward, eyes glinting with ruthless intent. "You thought you could slip through our fingers, Kane? Think again. Your betrayal, your weakness, ends here." Elias raises his weapon, voice resolute. "I didn't come this far just to fall at the hands of cowards." The yard erupts into chaos, a maelstrom of violence, screams, and shouts as fists and shanks collide. Elias's vision blurs with adrenaline and despair, realizing that in this brutal crucible, survival hinges on outsmarting the shadows, on betraying everyone he once trusted, including himself. The last thing he sees before darkness descends is the face of Lila, watching coldly from the sidelines, her true motives revealed in her hollow eyes. An ally turned enemy, her betrayal sealing his fate, transforming the prison yard into a battleground not just of flesh and steel, but of shattered trust and fractured morality. As the crowd of brutal enforcers closed in around Elias, the reality of his imminent execution weighed heavily on his chest, each breath shallow and trembling with the cold dread of finality. The yard was thick with the stench of sweat, blood, and raw fear, a cacophony of shouts and clangs echoing through the steel fences. His eyes darted desperately, seeking any shred of hope amid the chaos he had meticulously conjured. Suddenly, amid the frenzy, Elias's fingers flicked over a hidden device tucked into his sleeve. A tiny but powerful hacking module he'd concealed since his arrival. With a swift, practiced motion, he activated it, fingers moving like a ghostly dance over an embedded keypad, silently opening a clandestine access point into the prison's internal communication system. Come on," he muttered under his breath, heart pounding against his ribs like a drum. The chaos reached its crescendo. Guards shouted orders, inmates fought wildly, and the entire yard teetered on the brink of a riot. Elias's voice crackled through the hidden speakers, broadcasting a carefully crafted message to the outside world. "This is Kane. The prison's corruption runs deeper than you know. Kill me, and you'll only be feeding the beast. Evidence of the faction's crimes, prison officials colluding with the syndicate, are streaming live now. Expose them." The bright, flickering message appeared on the external monitors, visible from the far reaches of the prison yard and beyond. His bloodshot eyes flicked to the nearby guards, whispering commands, unaware of the digital sabotage unfolding behind their backs. Elias's mind raced, every second counted. Amidst the chaos, the guards' radios crackled, but what they heard was garbled static, his interference disrupting their signals. The faction's enforcers, momentarily stunned, hesitated as the truth spilled out in vivid, unfiltered pixels, their secrets laid bare for the world to see. Elias knew this act was a gamble, If the authorities didn't respond swiftly, it was still a gamble, but it was his final shot. A desperate, calculated move to turn the tide, to unmask the conspiracy, and strike a blow against the shadows that had haunted him for years. As the crowd surged and the riot ignited into full-blown violence, Elias's vision blurred with adrenaline and hope. The last thing he saw before the guards caught up was the cold, calculating stare of the faction's leader, who had watched the chaos unfold with a sinister calm. Elias's fingers tightened around his makeshift device, knowing that this act of defiance, this final betrayal, might cost him everything, including his life. But it also might spark the chaos that would bring justice to light. The deafening clash of fists and shouts drowned out the faint hum of his hacked system. The revelation now lived, streaming into the dark corners of the outside world, where someone somewhere might finally see through the shadows and pull him from the abyss. Elias's eyes into a cold, disdainful smile. "You've played your hand, hacker. Now, it's over." Elias smirked, pulling a small device from his coat pocket, the screen flickering with live streams and encrypted feeds. "Not quite. See, I've been feeding both sides information, twisting your plans, exposing your flaws. Every move you made, I knew about it. You think you're the puppet master? I've been pulling your strings since day one." The leader's eyes flickered with suspicion, but his composure remained unbroken. "You're just another pawn, reckless and naive." Elias took a step closer, voice rising above the chaos. "Naive? No, I've been playing the long game. While you thought I was your enemy, I was secretly working for myself, leaking evidence to the authorities, stirring dissent within your ranks. All the while I was destabilizing your grip, making sure that when this all blew apart, I'd be the one standing in the ruins, not you." As he spoke, the prison erupted in violent upheaval. Shouts turned into screams. Guards scrambled to contain the pandemonium. Elias's fingers danced over his device, initiating a final, decisive stream that broadcast the underground conspiracy to the outside world. Corruption, betrayals, and the faction's most guarded secrets spilling into the open. The leader's face twisted with rage, recognizing the betrayal, yet too late to contain it. "You think this will save you? You're just digging your grave," he snarled, lunging forward. But Elias's expression was calm. Calm in the eye of the storm, knowing that he had already won. In this dangerous game of deception, he had turned the faction's own power against them, revealing their rot to the chaos they had built their empire upon. The prison trembled beneath them, as every wall seemed to fracture, the floodgates of corruption bursting wide open. Elias backed away, steady and unyielding, as the entire facility descended into a maelstrom of violence, knowing that this act of treachery had forever shattered the shadows, and that he had finally exposed the darkness hidden in plain sight. The chaos erupted like a sudden volcanic surge, engulfing the prison in a maelstrom of fire and fury, as Elias, eyes blazing with determined intensity, exploited every digital weakness he could find. His fingers flew over a battered old tablet, hacking into the prison's internal communication system with relentless precision, a silent symphony of code that sent shockwaves through the underground network of the faction. Inmates, startled and ravenous for rebellion, seized the moment. Doors slammed open, and shouts echoed as prisoners, driven by Elias's clandestine manipulations, turned on their captors. Faction enforcers caught off guard by the sudden uprising. With a masterful touch, Elias's voice crackled through hidden speakers, guiding the chaos. "This is your chance. Take back what's yours. Make them bleed." The uprising surged, inmates wielding makeshift weapons, wielding rage like a storm, as if the prison itself had become a living beast, tearing through the facade of control. Amidst the tumult, Elias moved stealthily, weaving through the chaos toward the central control room, the battleground where the final confrontation awaited. Inside, the faction's leader, a cold man cloaked in a tailored suit, sneered as he spotted Elias slipping through the fray. "You think you can outsmart us? You're just a hacker, a ghost in the machine." He spat, voice thick with contempt. Elias's response was calm, almost eerily so, as he raised his device and smirked. "No, I'm the storm you never saw coming, your downfall written in every line of code I've laid bare." With a deft flick, Elias activated his last gambit, triggering a live broadcast that crackled through the prison's PA system. The feed revealed the faction's darkest secrets, corrupt officials, hidden weapons caches, and Marcus's murder, orchestrated in silence from behind the veneer of power. The leader's face twisted with rage as the entire prison trembled beneath the weight of revelation. Walls shuddered, steel groaned, and the inmates, caught in the surge of rebellion, roared with primal fury. Elias stepped forward, voice steady. "This is what lies beneath your empire of shadows. Corruption, betrayal, and lies. Now everyone knows." The leader lunged, furious and desperate, but Elias was already several steps ahead. In a final act of cunning, he activated a dormant self-destruct protocol. Not a literal explosion, but a digital purge that would leave the faction's grip in ruins. The prison's lights flickered and went dark, the screams of enforcers drowned out by the rising storm outside. Elias, cloaked in chaos, watched as the walls cracked, the power fractured, and the prison's dark heart finally exposed and shattered. His master stroke of treachery, turning the faction's own control into their undoing, all while he slipped away in the shadows, knowing he had finally unraveled the web of lies that had ensnared them all. The chaos within the crumbling prison reached a fever pitch as Elias surged through the blood-slick corridors, his footsteps pounding in sync with the distant roar of violence echoing through the broken walls. Sparks flew from fractured electrical panels as alarms blared, their piercing wails mingling with the shouts and screams of inmates and guards caught in the maelstrom. Elias's sharp hazel eyes darted around, searching for any opening, any crack that could carry him to freedom amid the collapsing chaos. "Move, now or never," he barked, slipping past a guard's barricade just as a fire ignited in the next cell, flames licking up the concrete walls like a deadly serpent. His breath was ragged, but his mind razor-sharp, recalculating every step, every risk. The prison's main hall was a madhouse, fists flying, metal shanks gleaming under flickering lights, inmates fighting desperately to escape the spiraling violence. Elias ducked behind a toppled table, clutching a makeshift weapon, a bent piece of steel, and listened as shouting guards tried to regain control. This was his moment, the perfect storm. He pushed forward, the chaos masking his movements, as he slipped past a group of faction enforcers battling inmates, their faces twisted with fury and confusion. "Get him!" someone yelled. But Elias was already in motion, blending into the pandemonium. He navigated the maze-like tunnels, walls slick with blood and sweat, every shadow a threat, every corner a gamble. The flickering fluorescent lights cast sinister shadows that danced like phantoms, heightening the sense of impending doom. As he emerged into the yard, the sky above was a swirl of smoke and fire, the distant crackle of gunfire punctuating the tumult. Overhead, the prison's tower loomed ominously, a silhouette against the fiery chaos. Elias spotted an opening, an unguarded service exit that led to the old maintenance tunnels, a forgotten route now their only chance. He sprinted, heart pounding like a war drum, lungs screaming for air. Just as a squad of faction enforcers appeared in pursuit, he dove through the broken door, ripping aside tangled barbed wire, and slid into the shadows outside. The air was thick with the scent of burnt rubber and blood as he emerged into the night, the prison's walls ablaze behind him, a blazing monument to the uprising he had orchestrated. From the shadows, Elias watched the prison erupt like a beast caught in its death throes, walls cracking, guards overwhelmed, factions fighting each other amidst the flames. His breath hitched as he saw the chaos swallow the corrupt system whole. Every desperate scream, a testament to his calculated rebellion. With a quick glance back, he pulled out his homemade device, an improvised hacking tool he'd hidden in his sleeve, and connected to the last encrypted radio channel. "This is the real escape," he whispered into the device, voice trembling but resolute. A flicker of a smile crossed his face as he uploaded the final evidence of corruption and betrayal, broadcasting it to external authorities waiting outside. The explosion of digital truth joined the physical chaos inside, turning the authorities' efforts into a frenzy of confusion and distrust. Elias's heart hammered as he darted into the shadows, weaving through wreckage and wrecked vehicles, knowing he had just turned the prison's own chaos against its oppressors. He moved with purpose, driven by vengeance and survival, knowing that this moment, the chaos he'd ignited would mark the end of their grip and the beginning of whatever came next. As Elias stepped out into the cold, suffocating air beyond the crumbling gates of the prison, a heavy weight pressed down on his chest, mingling with the icy gusts that whipped his face. The chaos he had ignited inside, the digital explosions, the violent uprising, the shattered illusions of control, now echoed in his mind with brutal clarity. Every step away from the wreckage was a step into an uncertain abyss. The distant wail of sirens and the flickering glow of flames painted a haunting tableau of destruction he had meticulously orchestrated, yet now felt like an unanticipated monster unleashed. His eyes, sharp and bloodshot, flicked across the landscape. Rubble, twisted metal, and the flickering shadows cast by fires, reminding him of the stakes he'd gambled with his soul. "Did I do the right thing?" he whispered aloud, voice hoarse but unwavering. The question hung in the frigid air, unanswered, as he clutched the device still warm against his palm. The sound of muffled voices and hurried footsteps approached. The authorities, the corrupt guards, the remnants of the faction, all converging in chaos. His mind flashed back to Marcus, the unwavering friend whose death had ignited this fire, and to Lila, whose betrayal had brought him to this precipice. Elias's jaw clenched. "I've torn down their empire," he murmured, voice trembling with a mixture of triumph and remorse. But at what cost? His gaze drifted to the horizon, where smoke billowed upward, obscuring the dawn. The bitter taste of victory coiled in his throat as he realized the storm he'd unleashed had not only shattered the corrupt regime, but also forever altered his own moral landscape. Every fiber of his being insisted that justice had finally been served. Yet beneath that, a whisper of doubt remained, gnawing at the edges of his consciousness. Did surviving mean he'd become just like them? Willing to burn everything to the ground, including his own soul? As he moved further into the night, blending with shadows, Elias knew that the path ahead was murky and treacherous, filled with the ghosts of what he'd lost, and the fragile hope of whatever justice could still be salvaged from the wreckage. And in his deafening silence, beneath the flickering flames and the distant sirens, he understood that, while he had dismantled the faction's secret reign, the true battle, the battle for his own humanity, was far from over. Elias stands alone at the edge of a desolate hill, the moon casting a cold silver glow over the cracked earth beneath his feet. The distant silhouette of the prison looms behind him, fortress-like and ominous, whispering echoes of violence, betrayal, and the ghosts of his past. His breath forms ghostly clouds in the crisp night air as he gazes back, eyes flickering with a mix of relief and profound despair. His fingers brush the scar on his cheek, the silent reminder of every choice he's made, every life he's taken or lost. The wind stirs his tattered jacket as he turns slightly, voice barely a whisper. "Did I do enough? Did I become what I fought against?" His voice cracks, heavy with the weight of unspoken regret. He tightens his grip on the crumpled letter in his hand, a confession from Lila, revealing her true motives, her plans to escape, her betrayal, and her own survival at any cost. Shadows dance across his face as he paces slowly, each step echoing the internal clash, vengeance or mercy, morality or survival. Memories flood in. Marcus's bright smile, the chaos of the riot, the hacking screens flickering with truths uncovered, and the moment he orchestrated the prison's collapse, exposing corruption and shattering the sinister facade. Yet beneath that victorious veneer, a gnawing doubt persists. Was justice truly served? Or did he merely become the very monster he sought to destroy? His eyes wander to the horizon, where the first hints of dawn threaten to pierce the dark sky, promising a new beginning but also shadowed by the remnants of his moral scars. Surviving! Was it worth everything? He murmurs, voice trembling as he steps forward, each movement deliberate yet heavy with the somber understanding that the fight within him is far from over. As he walks into the uncertain future, the ghostly outline of the prison fades into the distance. The place where loyalty was tested, friendship shattered, and his soul forever altered. In the silence that follows, Elias clenches his fists, feeling the ache of loss and the faint hope that, somehow, redemption can still be found amidst the ruins of his morality. Elias sat alone in the dim glow of his cluttered apartment, the faint hum of the city outside a distant echo to the chaos he had unleashed within those prison walls. His fingers trembled as he scrolled through the encrypted message lighting up his cracked phone screen. You think it's over? Think again. Shadows never die. His heart pounded, a mix of adrenaline and dread, as he replayed the final hours. The chaos he orchestrated, the corruption exposed, the faction's hold shattered, yet somehow, the darkness still lingered. He clenched his jaw, eyes narrowing as he muttered, "This isn't the end. Not for them. Not for me." His mind raced through the faces. Lila's betrayed smile, the icy stare of the faction's leaders, the specter of Marcus's memory, and realized that in his quest for vengeance, he had only scratched the surface of something far more insidious. The message flickered again. You're not safe. They're coming for what's theirs. Elias's fist tightened. He knew the fight had only begun. The shadows cast by his actions stretched long and unyielding, threatening to swallow what little peace he had managed to carve out. His survival had come at a price. His morality, his trust, his innocence, all sacrificed in the crucible of revenge. As he looked out into the darkened city, a cold sweat broke on his brow. "They want me dead," he whispered, voice rough with exhaustion. "And I can't run forever." The distant sirens, the flickering streetlights, the chilling reminder that no victory was pure. It all blurred into a relentless reminder that the darkness he had fought so fiercely to destroy was only waiting in the wings, ready to strike again. Elias knew one thing with brutal certainty. As long as shadows lurked, his fight would never truly be over. The ghosts of betrayal, vengeance, and survival would haunt him, whispering that even in victory, he was forever tethered to the abyss he dared to challenge. With a heavy sigh, he reached for his battered coat, shoulders sagging but resolve burning anew. "This is just the beginning," he said softly to the empty room, knowing well that the shadows from his past would continue to hunt him. An unending war in the darkness, where only the cunning and the merciless could hope to survive. The memory flickered vividly like a ghost, revived from the depths of Elias's fractured mind. An evening, long past yet etched painfully into his soul. They had sat on the rusted metal bench beneath the flickering street lamp, the city's distant hum muffled by the night's quiet. Marcus, normally the picture of seriousness, had cracked a rare, genuine laugh as Elias joked about a failed hacking stunt, his eyes twinkling with mischief amid the shadows. "You really think you can outsmart the system with that?" Marcus had teased, voice full of warmth and mockery. Elias had chuckled, a rare sound that momentarily lifted the weight of their brutal reality. "Hey, I'm just getting started," he'd replied, pushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. Marcus had clapped him on the back, grin widening. "You're crazy, man. That's what I like about you." The breeze had been cold, but their shared warmth had been undeniable. Brothers in the chaos, bonded by their mutual defiance. Elias could still see Marcus's smile, the way his eyes sparkled with loyalty and unspoken promises. A stark contrast to the darkness that soon swallowed him. The memory surged, a bittersweet ache, as Elias's fingers clenched into fists, recalling the sound of Marcus's voice, the way he'd always see the best in everyone, even in the face of impending doom. That laugh, innocent and genuine, now felt like a fragile thread holding Elias to his humanity amid the brutality of their prison world. It was in those fleeting moments of camaraderie that Elias had glimpsed hope, a fleeting sanctuary from the chaos, to believe that beneath the scars and betrayals, friendship could survive. Now, each time he remembered that laugh, it burned like a fresh wound, fueling his relentless drive for vengeance. Because Marcus's death hadn't just been a brutal end for a friend. It was a deliberate severing of everything Elias held dear, a symbolic blow designed to crush his spirit. And as Elias sat in the shadows of his cell, replaying that stolen moment of laughter, he understood that the only way to honor Marcus's memory was to fight. Not just for revenge, but to carve out a future where such innocence might someday be reclaimed, no matter how deep the darkness grew. The memory clung to him, a fragile, shimmering reminder of what he'd lost and what he still dared to hope for amidst the ruthless shadows of their worlds. The first light of dawn spilled over the rugged horizon, casting a muted gold glow across the uneven terrain where Elias Kane stood, silent and watchful. His silhouette was stark against the awakening sky, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on the horizon as if searching for answers beyond the chaos he had wrought. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and lingering smoke, a testament to the riot that had just unfolded within the prison walls, a chaos orchestrated by his own hand, yet beyond his control. His hands, once trembling with adrenaline, now rested loosely at his sides, fingers curling into fists as memories flickered like fractured images. Marcus's laugh echoing in the darkness, their shared moments of rebellion and trust now shattered by betrayal and bloodshed. Elias inhaled deeply, tasting the bitter tang of remorse mingled with resolve. He whispered softly to the morning, voice rough from months of strain, "Did I do it right?" His gaze drifted over the quiet valley below, where faint silhouettes moved like shadows, reminders of lives torn apart, of the fragile veneer of order that every victory had threatened to shatter. As the sun crested the distant hills, a fleeting warmth spread across his face, conflicting with the cold heaviness in his chest. In that moment of stillness, he allowed himself a rare flicker of hope that somewhere beyond the darkness and bloodshed, a sliver of light still existed. Yet beneath that fragile hope lurked the persistent shadow of doubt, whispering that every step forward might plunge him deeper into madness, that the price of his revenge had irrevocably changed him. He tightened his jaw, turning away from the horizon, the weight of his choices pressing down like an unyielding storm. The past haunted him, the laughter, the trust, the innocence lost in the maelstrom of betrayal. But in his eyes there was a flicker of defiance, a quiet acknowledgement that survival meant carrying both hope and remorse in equal measure. As he descended into the dawn-lit valley,